Okay. I think we're working, so I'm getting error messages, but it says it's now streaming live. So welcome to our Facebook audience as well. Nice to have you all here. So this session is the role of the teacher as an online or remote theatre director with Haneen Jadallah. How are you today, Haneen?
Yeah, I'm doing very well, thank you.
And where are you joining us from?
I am joining from Cairo at the moment.
Right, you're in Cairo. Okay, so it's great to have you here. And before I pass over, let me just tell everyone a bit about you. So Haneen Jadallah is an English language teacher, a teacher trainer, and an online theatre specialist. She has a special interest and expertise in drama and language learning, and has developed her own framework for students to create their own plays and perform them remotely, so online, to the outer world. She's passionate about connecting young people around the world through intercultural link-ups and online theatre. So we're really lucky and excited to have you here today. And I'm sure everybody can't wait to hear all about how to do this and the role of the teacher as an online theatre director. So over to you, Haneen. I'm going to disappear now, but here if you need me, okay?
Thank you, Joanna. Thank you. Hello, everybody. I am Haneen. I am from Gaza, Palestine. I live in the UK at the moment, and I have a master's degree in drama and English language teaching. And my webinar today will be the outcome of long years of experience working with young learners and teenagers, connecting them in Gaza with their counterparts all over the world, doing remote theatre. So if you can type in the chat box, have you heard about the term remote theatre before? And have you done remote theatre with your learners on Zoom or other video conferencing tools? Please write in the comments. And I can see some people saying yes, others saying no. So, okay, so I will be talking about this at the moment, and hopefully by the end of this webinar, you will take away lots of practical ideas and you will be excited to start off with this very exciting and very powerful kind of theatre. Let me share my slides with you. Give me a moment. So the role of the teacher as remote theatre director and intercultural exploration. In this webinar, I am going to share insights from my MA dissertation study, which I have finished in October 2023. I'm going to start off by talking about the context of the study, how this came about, and then I will be moving to what are the areas that I was interested in exploring and finding more about. I will be defining remote theatre and how does it work. I will be talking about what and why in terms of remote theatre, based on my experience as English language teacher, a drama club leader, and remote theatre director for 7 years in Gaza. And also I will be telling you about the methodological tools I have used during my work as a teacher trainer to find more about the role of the teacher as remote theatre director. I will share with you the process of rehearsing a play on Zoom and insights coming from the teachers and some challenges when you work as a remote theatre director on Zoom across different time zones and different countries. There we are, the context of the study. So in 2023, as part of my previous involvement with a UK registered charity, which connects young people from Palestine with their counterparts in other parts of the world, I was involved in a remote theatre teacher training program, which took place from February to May 2023 and was supported by the UK registered charity, the Hands Project. I was a teacher trainer at that time during that program, And I took a leading role in pairing up teachers from 16 different countries from Gaza with their counterparts in other countries who were involved in that teacher training program as a part of their preparatory stage to enter the international competition that was announced and led by the charity. Those teachers have rehearsed plays with me and my colleagues, and they recorded them on Zoom to submit their entries for the competition. So the insights I am going to share today will be based on both my experience as a teacher director working with learners directly and my experience as a teacher trainer working on remote theatre teacher training, particularly the one I did during my previous involvement as a volunteer. The program includes weekly sessions. We were putting the teachers in breakout rooms. They were rehearsing plays, 2 teachers, one from Gaza and the other one from another country, with their learners, and they were rehearsing their plays in the breakout rooms. We were coming in, giving feedback, support them, and give the necessary feedback for development. And then extra sessions were provided upon their needs. So I was inspired by my long-term involvement in that area and by the remote theatre teacher training program that I did with those brilliant colleagues from Gaza and other parts of the world. So I just thought I wanted to explore those areas as part of my MA. So the first area I wanted to explore is what is the teacher director's criteria in selecting a play? Because during that teacher training program, the plays were ready to be selected. They were not written by the learners, although I would rather have the learners to write their own plays. And that's why I developed my framework back in 2018 to empower learners to write their own plays and become authors rather than consumers. But it was also good to have a resource that the teachers can refer to and select a play. So I wanted to have a look at the criteria that the teachers wanted to use in selecting their plays, especially that 2 teachers are working together, coming from different cultures and working in different educational settings. And then I wanted to set out some strategies and techniques and patterns of interactions that took place during those rehearsal sessions on Zoom. And it was very interesting to see different patterns of interaction between the teacher director and the learners, and different ways of scaffolding learners, different techniques used, either in terms of language development or performance development. And then I was interested in looking at how this impacted learners' overall performance on Zoom using English as a second language, and also their language development, how their language has developed when those learners worked with people from the outside doing theatre on Zoom. And of course, when you work across different time zones, you will have challenges standing in the way, how the teachers were determined resilience in dealing with those challenges. So, what is remote theatre? Can you please write in the chat box, what do you think remote theatre is? Okay, so remote theatre is performing plays remotely using video conferences tools like Zoom. It could be some other platforms other than Zoom, but in my case, we were using Zoom to an audience, whether this performance is synchronic, live, on Facebook or on platforms that you're using with your learners, having your audience out there to watch them, or asynchronous, recorded. How remote theatre becomes intercultural? When 2 groups, at least, it could be more than 2 groups, work together from 2 different countries, or more than 2, but the least is 2, collaborate to rehearse on Zoom. And I would like to say that in Gaza, it was very, very important to do remote theatre and intercultural remote theatre. And this grew and was born in Gaza because of the pressing need for learners to connect to that world. They wanted to tell the world their stories. They wanted to tell the world their wishes and hopes and the powers they have and the creativity they wanted to share. So basically, it was a storytelling platform. The learners in Gaza and the teachers wanted to share what they know about their context, about dreams, about hopes, about wishes with the world. So it was very, very important for them to engage in theatre on Zoom because of all the restrictions around travel and being in contact with the outside. That was a perfect tool that was born with our work with the charity at that time and with colleagues. And then it was developed into what it is at the moment. So going back to the slides, why do we do remote theatre? As I said, because learners wanted to share their stories to the world. They wanted to prove that they are confident and creative and proud to talk about their context, to talk about their wishes and dreams. Remote theatre performances on Zoom and all the discussion and the rehearsals and the repetitions of the plays provide a rich language learning opportunity for learners to use English in an authentic context, because both learners and teachers from both places would have the time and the space to talk about things about their lives and what they have done on the day and what they wanted to do for the next weekend when they are working together over a considerable period of time. So this is authentic rather than giving them a structure to stick to in a traditional classroom. Also, it's a way of giving the learners the space to celebrate their identities, to enhance their intercultural competence, to approach to others, to form a kind of understanding. In a world torn by conflict nowadays, we wanted to have tolerance and patience and forgiveness, and we wanted to learn about others' powers and weaknesses and form an approach, a kind of understanding about them, which is very, very important when you learn a language, because language and culture are intertwined and they are connected pretty much in all kinds of contexts. It's very important when we work with learners, especially when we do drama and theatre, to focus on their identities. So a group of learners working with another group of learners don't mean that this group is going to erase their identity and completely melt into other cultures. It's a way to give them the chance to celebrate their identity, to cherish them, and at the same time to form a bit of understanding and enhance their intercultural competence. It's a great way to enhance learners' self-confidence and self-esteem. I have seen learners in Gaza and in other parts of the world in the beginning of doing theatre, and also all along the way. And I have seen how their personalities have developed, how they stand very tall in front of the screen, speak the language, no worrying about mistakes, just speak English and try to feel what they are speaking, try to act the lines out and imagine that the camera is your audience. Speak to the camera, the whole world is behind you, the whole world is watching you. So this kind of concept that your audience is the world and the camera is your stage give the learners quite a lot of confidence to stand and act. And if you believe in them, they believe in you and they will go with you all the way through to do remote theatre on Zoom and to speak to people from the outside. Now I am going to be sharing the process and the stages of doing a play on Zoom. So how did I find out about the criteria? How did I find out about the techniques, the stages? What were the teachers doing as directors? I employed 3 methodological tools. Video analysis. So I watched 5 video sessions, complete sessions of rehearsals that we were doing on Zoom with those teachers coming from different countries, speaking different home languages, and bearing with different teams from Gaza. I watched the videos, I did transcripts, and then I was looking at all the techniques and the criteria. Then I spoke to the teachers. I interviewed 10 teachers from Gaza, Argentina, Malaysia, Italy, Ecuador, and Venezuela. And we talked about their techniques and their insights about doing intercultural remote theatre on Zoom. Then we did some very interesting method called reflective practice. And Steve Mann has talked a lot about reflective practice in his books, and there were a lot of practical ideas about how to do that in a classroom. So I asked 3 teachers to watch their rehearsals again and provided either spoken or written reflections on the videos. So the teachers looked at the rehearsals and then they were looking at, okay, at this stage, I should have done that differently, or it's good that I have done that. And it was very helpful to look at the reflections coming from the teachers for improvement. What I found out, and this is what you can take away from this webinar and go back to your classroom and try out. So the process of rehearsing intercultural remote theatre on Zoom in 2 locations could be more than 2, but the least is 2. Preparation for rehearsals on Zoom. And the first stage, the preparatory stage, contains selection of the play. So if you have a resource that you wanted to use, if you have a course book that have some plays or stories and you want to adapt and choose from, or if you have an interesting storybook that you wanted to get a script out of, we need to know how and why are you going to select this particular play with your learners. Orientation session, very, very important to give the learners a taste of what's going to come next. Technical training, logistics around using Zoom for remote theatre, because it's quite different from using Zoom for meetings, and discussion around the table with learners in the Zoom room around the themes of the play. If you're asking your learners to write their own plays and become authors, which is very, very powerful, I have tried this for many years in Gaza, it will be a different framework according to the students writing their plays. And maybe in the future, we will be talking about this in on a different occasion. During the rehearsals, I will be looking at different techniques that the teachers used to help learners learn the lines, how they were assigning the roles, how the learners were acting out the lines together, and discussion around the techniques used, the use of props and costumes, feedback giving to the learners, and improvement. Then in the post-rehearsal stage, after rehearsing and recording, we could find a platform to broadcast this play in various ways. It could be school symposium, it could be festival, it could be a conference. We collect learners' diaries to have a look at their experiences during the rehearsals. What have they done? What have they learned? What did they like about working with other learners in other parts of the world? What haven't they liked, and how we could improve this? And then collecting feedback and recommendations from colleagues to improve our process. So the criteria of selecting the play. This insight came about during the interview with a wonderful colleague from Gaza, and I rehearsed with him for a very long time, 3 months nearly, to get him prepared to submit the play. And when I asked him, what's your criteria of selecting the play, he gave that answer. And I would like to kindly ask you to write in the comment, what is the criteria here that the teacher mentioned in his lines? So the teacher said, 2 criterions. The first one is we needed a play that's relevant to our situation here in Palestine. Something talks about us, about our problems. You know, we as Palestinians live in difficulties. The topic of the play is about freedom. The topic is obvious. Freedom is priceless. This touches our hearts. This is number 1. And number 2, we want something which has a moral lesson at the end. We don't just need entertainment. Entertainment is good, but also we need something with a moral. This play has great moral. That is, freedom is priceless. So if you please write in the comments, what do you think the criteria that the teacher has followed in this play before doing it? Okay, so morals, that's right, excellent, yeah. Good, thank you. So, the teacher has looked at the learner's circumstances, their context, the challenges that they are facing, and interestingly, the teacher is facing as well, so he could feel what his learners has felt, and he wanted to show this to the world. So they wanted to choose a theme that reflects their identity and their needs and their culture, and also he wanted to connect that to ethics. That's right. Also, interestingly, when the teacher discussed this with the teacher partner explained that she completely agreed with him and they wanted to go about to do this play, which will teach her learners about the Palestinians' situations. So the criteria of selecting a play in general, we look at the learner's environment, the learner's circumstances, their context, their interests, their needs. We look at the learner's level, so your level of learners, kind of one focal point and one prominent factor in terms of selecting play to be just up to the level of the learners. The aim of learning through the play. Why do you want to do theatre with your students? Is it part of your extracurricular activities? Is it part of your creativity in the classroom? Is it part of connecting the students to the world? So you should be able to define the objective of going about learning through the play. And then one important criteria is cultural considerations among the learners involved. So both of the teachers should be sensitive to the learners' needs in terms of cultural diversities. The orientation session. So in the orientation session, we want to break the ice between the learners themselves in 2 different locations and the teachers as well. So one thing you could ask your learners to do at the beginning of the orientation session, learners introduce themselves in a very simple way. Put your camera on if you feel comfortable to do that, and do a mime or a movement that reflects your personality, your character, something that means something to you. And this way, we give the learners the space to show their identities and what they want others to know about them. Teachers then introduce the learners to the whole process of rehearsing play without going into details. What are you going to do in this project with learners from this country or that context? What are we going to do in the first stage? What are we going to do in the second stage, in the third stage, and so on? Both teachers and learners agree on the timetable. And this is a quite challenging area because working with teachers across time zones, it needs a lot of tolerance and considerations of each other's tables in zones because teachers work differently and in different times. Then the technical training, which is very, very important. One thing we highlight in doing Zoom is the use of green screen and virtual backgrounds when you do online or remote theatre on Zoom. So your screen is very important, your background is very important, the way you look to the audience is very important. And then sharing sound, we give technical training to the students about how to use all the buttons around sharing sound, sharing computer sound, because most of the plays have music and they wanted to share music so the teacher could help out with that. Or I've got quite a lot of learners doing that themselves, how to share sound and how to do a voice off. And a voice off means that one of the characters could be acting out and we can hear another character's voice in the background. Or a very interesting way of voice off, I will show you in a minute, I will demonstrate it and stop sharing the slides, of using parts of your body and speak. Appearing on and off stage by training them to turn on and off their camera quite normally and quickly, and show different ways of entering on and off the stage, which is the screen and the camera. Establishing a timetable between the two groups. And let me give you a demonstration of the voice off. So one powerful technique of using Zoom is intriguing the audience of what's going on. So if you share music in the background and you have a hand of somebody, and then somebody else is saying, stop, stop, you can't go, I won't let you in, I won't let you in. Or another technique that learners used in my classes, they drew some faces on their fingers and they were doing that and showing different emotions related to the play they were performing. Or somebody could show a fist, or somebody could pass objects through the screen and other people can receive them as if they were in the same room. So these were different techniques and ideas that you could use in your classroom, intercultural classroom on Zoom. And learners love to do that. And learners feel confident to do that with props, with parts of the bodies, or sometimes learners love to start the show by showing something completely untraditional, like showing a feat, or somebody is playing football on the ground, and then the audience would have to guess what is the play about. So the first thing, selecting a play, discussing with learners and teachers, partners about the criteria, then orientation session, where we looked at how to break the ice, how to introduce the learners to the process, and then how to do technical training. And then this is one of the most powerful and richest stages at the preparatory stage. And it was introduced by Leach 2030, called Discussion Around the Table. So get your learners together in the Zoom room. Let everybody come in and start a discussion around the themes of the play before introducing them to the actual script. This would enhance their creativity, their critical thinking skills, and they would give them the space to say what they think. And then the teacher asks the learners to improvise the lines according to the discussion in groups. So you could divide them into groups in breakout rooms, discuss the theme of the first scene. This group discussed the first scene, this group discussed the second one, and just according to the main theme, they could start improvising and just writing what they think characters are saying. And then the teacher in the last stage could reveal the actual script, and they could have a look at how similar or different their improvisation is. And imagine how much learning could happen in that process of getting them to discuss themes around the play with the teachers in the main room, sending them off to breakout rooms, to improvise the lines, to think about the theme and link it to their lines to guesses, and then look at how similar or different. And interestingly, you could adapt, you could mix the actual script with your students' improvised script, and it could be brilliant. It could be something very, very creative. Look at the following extract coming from a brilliant colleague that I worked with in Gaza. When I asked her about her technique of preparing students to the Zoom performance, she said, at the beginning, before showing them the lines, I told them, so she was doing a play called The Door, and there was, the first scene was about the door being closed. So that's how she wanted to start. And then she wanted to intrigue the students and enhance their imagination. So she said, imagine that you're sitting behind the door. And that was before actually giving them the script. And she said, I encouraged them to start improvising, to guess the lines of the play and how it starts. So she just said, imagine that you're sitting behind the door. What would you say? How can we do that? What are we going to see behind the door? So improvisation may help the students. Guess what? They are going to perform and guess the lines of the script before giving them the script. So she demonstrated to me and she told me that their lines were quite similar to the actual script, which is fantastic. Then I told them to choose a character they feel that they can do it. What do you think about this extract? Please write in the chat box. What do you think about the technique that this teacher used to enhance her students' creativity, self-confidence, that their ideas are welcomed and appreciated, identities? So she was doing that with one group in Gaza, and she did that quite brilliantly with young learners. She was encouraging them by prompting their thinking with questions. What can we see? How can we do that? So what do you think about that? Kindness, good. Fantastic. Visualization, that's right. Excellent. Visualization, motivation, yeah, that's right. Because she wanted to motivate them and to anticipate them to think about what's coming next. And fantastic comment here. They understand the ideas globally before getting into the specific details. So we don't only want them to repeat the language without understanding what they're saying. Curiosity, excellent. Thank you very much for your comments. And let me move on the slides. So we are moving to the second stage now during the rehearsals. And I would like to shed the light on the first rehearsal. Warm-up activities. Put your learners in groups of 3 and ask each, it's probably better to mix them up, so to put people from different countries together. And then ask each group in a breakout room to choose a concept like family or love or home. So they could also choose their concepts themselves. You could give them the concepts, or you could ask them to give the concepts, and then you could divide the concepts among the groups. For me, I always like to ask the students to suggest ideas and suggest concepts in theatre, because this would mean something to them and this would relate to their interests. And then you send them off to the breakout rooms. You say, each group, please, you do a still image of this concept to the camera, a silent still image. So they will work together in the breakout rooms with their cameras in different locations and produce a frozen image, a whole scene, a still image, a silent image of what they think, for example, family is, or what family represents to them, or other concepts that they might have chosen. And this is very important because people from different cultures and different locations would give different interpretation of what this concept might mean to them. And they would collaborate and agree to do the still image together. And then to improve that and to build on that, you could share music for them in the background, which is linked to the concept they have chosen or you have given. And then to involve everybody in the main room back again when they perform the still images, you could ask the group to perform their still image and then other people in the room to keep them alert. You could ask questions about the still image. And this is very rich in terms of cultural diversity because people are coming from different locations and they will answer the questions differently. That would help them to understand each other even before starting performing together. Another example, which we did, me and my colleague from Argentina back in 2022, working on a play called I Can Smell Her. And this play was originally created and performed by a group of Palestinian learners in Gaza. And we did improvisation without the version of the actual script. So this is a conversation between the old man and the girl. And this scene was chosen from the play and was given to the performance from Gaza and Argentina. So the question was, the old man was, we provided the first line of the scene and we asked the learners to think and fill out the spaces in the script. And as you can see in the middle, there is a stage direction. And this is very important to explain when you go through the script with learners, because it would mean that the learners would need to understand that this is a stage direction and they would need to perform it. What are you doing? Take this stick to help you walk better. And then you could ask the learners to think what the girl might respond to that. You could make it even more challenging by erasing some of the words from the first lines. And then, because we were working with teenagers and their English level was quite high, so we left the last two lines completely blank for them to carry on the scene. And this is improvisation without showing them the full script. And then we asked them to improvise acting those lines. So the first time they would read out what they have said to each other. And then the second time they would try to put some feelings in, and this is how the rehearsal goes about. This is the actual script. And then they had to look at how similar or different was their improvisation. And it's quite interesting. If they have similar expressions, they would feel very, very happy and very confident that they've got it the same. And that's how learners feel about themselves when they get it right. And then maybe on a different occasion, we could get them to mix between the script they have improvised and the actual script. And this is one example of what both teachers can do in rehearsal sessions. So after distributing the script among learners, both of you, and maybe the learners if they would love to, but mainly the teachers, both of you should have the actual script and take some notes while you go, because it's very interesting when you start the rehearsal, how the ideas developed till the end. So if you keep a record, you could always go back to the record of ideas on the script and share with your students in your own context if you're doing a separate rehearsal before the joint rehearsals with the other group. So this is the same script from the same play. No, it's actually a different one. It's another play, but the ideas that came during that, we just recorded them and we were developing those ideas as we went during the rehearsals. Also, the third step is do a quick reading of the lines and assign the roles. So we distributed the script among learners involved and then play a read aloud tool for the learners to listen to the script. I would love to hear from you what other ideas you could use, or what other tools or what other methodologies you could use to get your students to read the script correctly. So for example, this is one idea is coming from the teachers that they were playing the read aloud tool on the PDF. They were sharing the script on the screen with learners and play that so it could read for them. Another possibility could be, please write in the comments, what are the different methodologies that you could use with your learners to get them read the script correctly. For example, would you record yourself reading the script for them? Or would you use another platform where you can share yourself recorded? So somebody is saying, maybe a muted video, watching a short scene with no sound, seeing what students imagine is said. Fantastic. Thank you, Steve. That's amazing. To listen to a recording. Great, Karima. Thank you. Yes, so you could record yourself saying the lines, and one of the teachers declared that she would create a WhatsApp group and she would record herself and then sending that to the students. That's great, thank you. Then another option is to move to the performance. Ask all learners to turn on their cameras and start doing a reading in a circle. Ask them to read in a circle. So the first learner on camera is going to read, the second one is going to carry on, and the third one. So it's like a series, it's like a rope of learners coming from different cultures and starting to reading beautifully with different accents affected by their mother tongues, which is fantastic, and absolutely celebrating English language as a lingua franca. Then you would send them to breakout rooms and ask them to negotiate around choosing their roles, and then they can come back to the main room and say their choices to the teachers, and then everybody would have a role to work on. One important area during the rehearsals is scaffolding the learners' utterances. So Maley and Duff in their book in 2010 said, students knowing that they will be on show will go to incredible lengths to get it right. And I totally believe in that. In a normal English or traditional English language classroom, if the learners didn't get it right, normally everybody understands everybody, and the teacher understands at least what the learner meant, and she can scaffold or she can leave it until later according to how the learners are. But in the play performance environment, I think that because the learners are going to deliver this play to an audience who might know nothing about the utterances, and they wanted to convey the message of the play, they need to get it right. And that's the beauty of doing remote theatre, because they are performing together. They won't feel sensitive about you scaffolding their utterances straight away. They want to get it right because they know that this is going to be delivered or broadcasted to audience. This is an extract coming from a rehearsal during the video analysis that I did. So Student 1 was saying, dear students, today I want to teach you a very important lesson. Everything that happens to us has a meaning. Sometimes it has many meanings. Sorry, the student said, sometimes it has many meanings. And the teacher director said, can you try this again, please? Many. And the student said again, sometimes it has many meaning. So the student repeated the mistake again. And the teacher said, many meanings, many meanings. Okay? And the student said, yes, many meanings. Can you please write in the chat box, what do you think the technique that the teacher director used here to scaffold the learner's utterances? Okay. So repetition, hearing oneself again, that's great. The teacher provided the language upon the point of need because the students obviously needed that, and the teacher modeled that for the student with repetition and a positive feedback. Thank you, Terry. That's great. Thank you very much. So this is one way. Another way is giving feedback on the performance, which is very, very important because here they are performing the language. So the teacher was telling the student how to say the line alongside performing it. So, what is your nationality? What is your nationality? What is your country? What is your country? So the teacher, I guess, was doing that for the kind of stress and intonation, which might sometimes be ignored in a traditional classroom or not giving enough importance, but it's very, very important in a remote theatre context. And then the teacher was telling the student to put the ear next to the camera. So they use the body language and how the learners perform the play and the lines is very important. And the role of the teacher as a director is to scaffold this and to show them sometimes showing them, sometimes asking them questions, sometimes anticipate them to think. So different techniques as we talked about. Now, carry on. Your ear next to the camera and carry on. Good. So the teacher was scaffolding learners on the performance. This is a controversial issue to the teachers to take away and think about. If you're doing a remote theatre performance, would you do the scaffolding immediately or would you do it after the rehearsal? According to the study, immediate feedback was very much effective to help the students to master their lines. Also because learners are working with each other and they don't speak the same language, so using L1 was always there. And one of the teachers was talking about how she switched to Arabic, which is the native language she spoke with her learners in the intercultural setting to help them sometimes with the performance or to give instructions. So why do we use L1? We use it to highlight learners' identity. We use L1 to empower learners in front of their peers and foster their appreciation of others. In this context, also learners were using names of their native language to name some festivals. Like in that context, they used words like Ramadan to talk about festivals and holy occasions in their own lives to their counterparts. So learning about other cultures and festivals and traditions is a valuable aspect of intercultural remote theatre, highlighting the learner's language to provide sometimes instructions, especially at the beginnings of they were stuck, to demonstrate some movement on the performance or to make decisions about the times. the challenges that came in the way, that one of the teachers told me that some of the girls in Gaza didn't understand the activities that their counterparts were involved in, and why couldn't they come to the rehearsals sometimes or carry on doing the rehearsals, because of course those activities didn't exist in their educational setting. So the teacher role is to ease those challenges in terms of technical problems with the internet connection, especially in a place like Gaza. It's always cutting out, tolerance and patience, and doing it again and again. Working across time zones and timetable arrangements considerations, looking at differences and similarities and try to find areas to share with. Cultural barriers, like those learners from Gaza, when they did a rehearsal with learners from Italy, they didn't understand why the girls have to go in the middle of the rehearsal because they had to do another activity in the afternoon or in the evening. And the teacher used the discussion and having conversation to them. Thank you for listening. And I would like to say remote theatre is very powerful and gives the students very rich language learning experience alongside their counterpart. And please find me on LinkedIn. I am doing similar projects with empowering learners to write their personal narratives now and for the next couple of years. Connect to me and I would be happy to work with you maybe in the future, and also to answer any inquiries or to give further feedback or answers to the questions. Thanks very much for the British Council to give me this opportunity.
Thank you.
And all my colleagues in Gaza and around the world.
Thanks, Haneen. That was so interesting and so inspiring. I'm sure it was a very challenging project to set up and a steep learning curve, but also very, very rewarding and with multiple benefits for everybody. So I think everybody who's been watching, there's people saying congratulations and people saying how inspiring and interesting it is. So thank you. And I think we're all thinking, right, how could I do this? Who can I connect with? What elements of this can I implement in my own classroom? So thank you. Let's take some questions because we've got some interesting questions. So one is, can we apply this? This is from Amina in Zoom. Can we apply this and perform with young learners or even beginners? What do you think about age and level?
Right. So that's a very interesting question, actually, because throughout the webinar, it seems like it's more for teenagers or people who have kind of good level of English, but it isn't, because you can use it with very young learners. And I recommend using very short stories like the ones are in the textbook and just adapt them to get a script. So the teacher could, the role of the teacher would be to kind of adapt the script if you were working with very young learners. It could be, I mean, young learners could be inspired by a very simple picture and write very simple sentences, and then both of the teachers could work on turning that into a conversation and scenes. So picture books and very simple stories could be a starting point with very young learners. And I would imagine that the teachers have to put more effort rather than the learners maybe at that stage to kind of convert into a kind of script. And once they trained, they can do it again with more kind of dependency on the learners.
Yeah, that's great. So obviously for younger students and for lower levels, the teacher would probably have to write the script and make sure it worked for them. But there's a question from Manuela who says, can learners prepare their own plays?
Of course, yeah. I mentioned that at the beginning. I said the remote theatre can be, and that's a very large area that I am interested in, is empowering learners to become authors rather than consumers of materials. And one way of that is to get them to start off by stories. They could even write personal stories and then share them with their counterparts and convert them into kind of script. Or you could do that as a group work, which is very related to a framework that I have tried out with my learners in Gaza. I will talk about this very quickly. I put them in groups and then I ask them to think about an issue that means something to them, and then to bring those stories back into the classroom, to agree on one. So each group has to submit one story and then model a script, and they convert those stories into scripts, and they do a presentation about those stories to the class just to break the ice and to raise their self-confidence. And then you will get, for example, say that you're working with 5 groups in the classroom, you will get 5 scripts ready to be performed. I worked with 43 people in my class. So it was a big number, but it worked very well. Yeah.
Right, thank you. It's so interesting to hear how you scaffold every stage and how you often put them in groups to share ideas and lots of thinking time. How long did it take you to do the whole project with that group?
That particular project that I talked about in my webinar. Well, I was a teacher trainer in that project rather than a teacher director directly. So I worked with teachers, and also I worked in rehearsal rooms with learners. And I would say roughly it will take 6 weeks to prepare a performance if teachers are trained in the beginning. So 6 weeks is roughly the time that it would take. But I worked on that from February to May.
And how many classes a week are you thinking? Is it just one class?
Well, we had central training session happening every Saturday, but then I was meeting with people, I don't know, maybe 3 times a week.
Okay. Yeah, so it's amazing because it's a really juicy project, right? There's so many different interesting aspects to focus on that are really valuable for learning. Okay, we're at the end of your session. I can't believe it. There's so many interesting questions to ask you, but do not fear, everybody, because Haneen is coming back to join us on Facebook, and we can continue this conversation. So yours is on Friday, the 3rd of May. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, okay, perfect. So this is UK time, 3 o'clock on Friday, the 3rd of May. 3 UK, and Haneen will be there to answer your questions on this topic and continue the conversation. And I just want to say thank you to everybody who has participated today. You all bring so much to the conversation, and I can see people exchanging ideas and tips in the chat, so that's really great. So thank you to everybody. Thank you to, is it Wayam and Marcus who are on Facebook? Thanks so much. Our next session is starting in 15 minutes. We've got David Heathfield for the last session of the day. But Haneen, it's been a pleasure. So thank you to everybody.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody. See you in 15 minutes.